Nick Fuentes, are you in fact a Fed?
No.
Okay.
The energy around Nick's movement, or maybe around Nick himself, the momentum that kind of sector has right now in the world of ideas is undeniable. It's huge. It's just becoming more and more appealing to more and more people every single day. And so if you are caught up on whether or not you're a fan of it, like whether you think it's good or not, you're going to miss the larger picture. And that's very similar to what has happened with Donald Trump.
The biggest and most controversial one is I really love the idea of America first. Trump said that at his inaugural. He said that at the RNC. And when I heard that, I said, that's me. Like, more than I'm a libertarian or even a conservative, I'm that. I'm America first. Right. I'm a national.
And while it's unclear where exactly the man Donald Trump himself aligns on any issue in particular, you never know. The important thing to understand about Donald Trump and why everything that goes on with him is so sensational is that because we are like historically in between two epochs. And so there's a massive transformation happening. You can call it like decline of empire. People think of it that way, but with technology and everything, it's actually more than that. But anyways, the point is that if you want to understand that about Donald Trump, because if you get caught on whether you think he's good or whether you think he's bad, then you're just going to miss the larger picture. And it's the same with Nick.
Speak with you. And, I think we agree on, maybe this is going to sound like I'm kissing your ass a little bit, but I do always feel like you were less bad than all the other people in the conservative movement.
That's high praise.
Well, and I know that sounds lame, but I mean, during the Groyper War, I know the Groyper showed up to your events. And I remember thinking, like, Crowder's he's not even really bad on many of the issues, like Daily Wire.
And the reason that this particular interview with Steven Crowder is so significant is because it is, first of all, one of the many interviews that Nick has done. And all of those interviews have kind of gone the same way. They haven't gone the same way, but the one outcome that they always have in common is that these people bring Nick on because at least a part of what they want to do is to distance themselves from Nick in front of everyone. They want to make themselves look more credible in comparison by having Nick on and disagreeing with him or disavowing him even, or whatever it is.
Or even like Turning Point was 6 years ago. They got a lot better in the intervening, maybe the past 3 years. Yeah. But I always think you have balls. So I think you're one of the more creditable people in the Con Inc. kind of scene.
Well, come on, don't put me in that scene. That's the thing. I'm not in that scene at all. I've been rejected by that scene, just maybe not quite like you, but quite a bit. I mean, I said the N-word.
And so even people who you might think are relatively close to Nick in terms of their politics they still feel this. Maybe it's just a pressure, maybe there's more going on, but they still feel this need to distance themselves from Nick. And the interesting thing about Steven Crowder is that you could say that maybe 10 years ago, Steven Crowder was Nick Fuentes. They're very different in a lot of ways, but they have one thing in common, which is that at one time, Steven Crowder was like the most extreme politically right you could be and still have a show as popular as his was.
That's interesting. So he agreed to come on, but then he canceled?
Yeah, it was just sort of informal, by text, and then I just haven't heard back from him. He's been on the show many times, so I'll give you credit, Nick. Candace, Tucker, Ben, Mark, everyone invited on. You're the only one with the balls to show up. I have to give you kudos for that.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate, even though you didn't call me out, I saw the clip.
Well, because I knew you would show up. You're like the candy man. I say your name 3 times in the camera, you'll show up. No, but we did reach out. I said we didn't want to because we didn't want it to be a conflict. We had already.
That was kind of his bread and butter, was being like an edgy kind of figure politically and being able to criticize power from the right in a edgy, outspoken kind of way. But now, 10 years later, he doesn't seem to have changed a lot, but he no longer occupies that edge position. The world of ideas has opened up quite a bit as the world has been changing, and now the edge is occupied by people more like Nick.
We need a Catholic theocracy or a Christian theocracy. I've heard the word dictatorship, correct me if I'm wrong. So I would ask you, since the end point seems much more similar to where Stalin reached, swap atheism for Catholicism or Christianity, would you be able to name, or is there any one thing that you think America, like concretely, should copy about Stalin's rule or methods to get there?
Not his methods, because like I said, he's an evil person, a murderer, and genocidal, arguably with the famine. I mean, I think it's pretty clearly intentional that they were trying to kill all those people there. And so I want to make that clear. Sometimes I feel like it's almost childish, and I'm not saying that about this interview, but just in general, when people say, wait, but he was a bad guy, it's like, I know he's a bad guy, like I know he was evil. And I suppose the thing that I find maybe more compelling about Stalin as a ruler is the way that he industrialized the country. I'm very interested in this, because that is, among the other things that I talk about, a very important problem in the countries that were deindustrialized. Yeah. And what Stalin...
And so you wonder with this interview whether Stephen is going to do what most other people do when they have Nick on, which is to kind of create this distance between himself and Nick in order to make himself seem more sane or more credible or more good in comparison, because the media has painted for a long time Nick Fuentes as being an evil, untouchable, reprehensible person. And so that's kind of the image that's out there about him. So for most of the world, that's what he represents.
On for a while, and I reached the end of the road, but I don't know if you know this. I've had a little bit of a, I guess you could say, turbulent history with Daily Wire myself. Not for the same reasons, but I will say this. There have been some things that I haven't talked about publicly regarding Daily Wire. People knew the contract issues, but I know you've used the term gatekeeping, and I can tell you that was something that bothered me behind the scenes too.
So even though you can see throughout this interview that Crowder feels that same political pressure to create distance between himself and Nick, and he does stand his ground quite a few times in terms of stating, well, I don't believe that, I believe this. What's really remarkable about this interview is that he also demonstrates that he gets it, and that he is kind of signaling throughout the interview that he is allied in some ways with not just Nick, but with the viewers, with Nick's fans, with the broader movement of, I guess, right populism, whatever you want to call it, because it's a bunch of things tangled together.
I would get into conversations with Google executives, people at YouTube, and especially as we got toward COVID and the vaccine, right, questioning that, or the lockdowns. I would have people very high up at Google, YouTube, say, well, we don't have these kind of problems with Daily Wire. And I said, well, I'm not. And without getting into any private information, there were conversations that took place, and that was something that really rubbed me the wrong way. It was sort of, you'll kill us last, right? And they famously bragged about spending more money on Facebook and Google than anyone else. And then there was pressure being applied from YouTube to sort of step in line. So I can corroborate that that was something I experienced behind the scenes, if that helps illuminate it all.
Yeah, and I remember it very well. I remember the apocalypse.
And so this might be the most mainstream, because Crowder is kind of an insider-outsider, where he has been kind of an edgy outside type of commentator for many years, but he also has the business relationships. He's been doing this for a long time. He is kind of a part of the system, you could say, in at least some ways, where you might have expected things to get more combative over the specific ideological differences. What you actually see is that Stephen is pretty eager to signal that he is open to an alliance. And by that, I just mean signaling to not just Nick, but to the fans and whoever's watching the video that he gets it in a lot of ways, and that he also has these frustrations with, well, they're talking about the Daily Wire a lot, but about...
By the way, I was never the one to release. Just to be clear, there are some people there who I'm friends with. Jeremy Boring was never one of them. The contracts necessitated it, right? Where they would penalize their own creators. I believe it was 25% for the first YouTube suspension, 15% more, another 50. If you read the contract, 15% for Facebook suspension. And so my issue wasn't the money. My issue was like, well, first off, this would be 110% penalties for me, because I'm literally suspended from all these places right now. But this is de facto doing the bidding of big tech. And that's the reason for it. I didn't like being put in that position, but yeah, so I can understand it. I can understand why a young guy would feel betrayed or feel hung out to dry.